Hi, everybody. You can read, so let's move forward. We're here to talk about visual effects and animation and all the fun, shiny stuff. So I'll just show you some stuff that I do. There we go.
Be silent. Keep your forked tongue behind your teeth.
Woo. Thank you. Whoop. Nope. You already saw a video. You don't get that one. So hi, everybody. My name is Sir Wade. My first name is Sir. Wade's my middle name, so I go by Sir Wade online. If you've ever seen my YouTube channel, which, has anybody here seen my YouTube channel? Oh, sweet. Got someone. Well, I am a filmmaker, turned VFX artist, turned animator. Then I became a trainer at DreamWorks. I went into freelance. I am now a content creator. And so at this point, these are the three kind of main categories of what I do. I'm an artist. I put a lot of projects together. And I teach. And I help other people do these things. My journey started in filmmaking in college, making a short film that went to the Cannes Film Festival. It's a lot less impressive when you hear the whole story, but it's still cool. At this point, these are kind of my three main things. I do animation, content creation, and I teach. Maya, Blender, Unreal Engine, a little bit of Houdini, tons of After Effects. I should address the fact that we're here to talk about visual effects, and none of what you saw in that first video was really like visual effects. It was mostly animation. We're going to get to that. We got lots of other videos. But the most important thing to know is that my journey began and continues with spandex. That's not all that important. But you're going to see all the behind-the-scenes videos is what this is about. So before I jump in, how many people are like new to visual effects? You don't do a ton of them, but you'd like to. Sweet. How many people do visual effects? And how many are like, oh, I do visual effects? Couple? Sweet. We're going to start off at the beginning. We're going to run through some stuff to get to the same page. We'll get to some more advanced stuff later. Hopefully there'll be something for everybody. So I thought we'd go through and just kind of name off what I consider to be the different categories that we've got in VFX. We've got motion graphics, which the talk is called Beyond Motion Graphics, so we're going to start here. These can be as simple as little sliders, right? We've all seen this stuff. I do have a tip for this if this is something you're like, oh, I kind of want to do this, though. This particular little slider, it's the same as this particular little slider. After Effects is the main tool I use to make this kind of stuff, and I just want to point out you can work smarter, not harder, just in case you didn't know this. If you make something, you animate something as a little bit of a template for yourself, inside of After Effects, is my mouse missing? There it is. The Essential Graphics panel has master properties. You can basically promote certain things like, hey, the text color, or the length of the box, or things like that. You can basically just say, hey, I want to be able to change those things later. So you customize them, make something new. This is a really simple example. In my case, you saw earlier, I had little check boxes where I could pick, oh, Instagram, Snapchat, different social media things. So I had one thing to just drop in. I didn't have 10 files to manage for all my videos. So just, if you're doing client work, if you're doing it for yourself, it's a handy little thing. So you just create a bunch of different versions. But motion graphics can go, there we go. Motion graphics goes way beyond just those little things. It's abstract stuff. It can be just like weird things that you see. I'm not going to talk too much about motion graphics. We want to go beyond that, but it's fun stuff. You're going to see a lot of these like early tests. Like this was the first motion graphics-y thing I ever did. And you can kind of tell, because I don't know what that is. But one of the first things that I got into that I wanted to share a little bit of some advice about, because there's some really cool developments with this, is audio-driven stuff. I've found in my experience that not a lot of people do this as service work, and it's not super common because After Effects is so bad at it. It's very powerful, but audio is not handled particularly well in After Effects, which is the main motion graphics and visual effects tool for most people getting into it. You can go beyond it, but This was my first, there we go, come on. This was my first ever audio-driven anything, which we're gonna mute. Just to point out, you can have stuff react to audio, right? Simple enough. I was trying to get into particles, I was trying to get into all these different things. This was my first real test. This is I think it was 3 million particles rendered. And if you look really closely, there's a little bit of a red bloom around this thing. That's supposed to be the whole thing turning red. It didn't work. It took 3 days to render this. By the time it came out, I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing it. And that's just the thing I wanted to mention is that when I first got into visual effects in general, audio-driven stuff was something I was really interested in, but I found it really difficult and just arduous to deal with because After Effects. You can do it in other tools. For example, this is in Maya, which is notoriously kind of the ugliest 3D software, but it's possible to do things. Right, so you can do more interesting 3D things, but tools like Maya aren't really designed for motion graphics. It does have the functionality. Blender can do stuff, there's a lot you can do, but I just wanted to point out a new pipeline that I've been playing with for this kind of thing, because not a lot of people are doing it. I just want to point it out to you. So this is a default shape in Maya, and most tools you can just create a 20-sided shape. It's a D20, it's a dice. Bring the substance, slap some materials on it. You can bring it into Unreal Engine, and it looks really nice. You can have tons of them with these big fancy Megascan rocks, all free. And this was for, my attorney has a podcast, the D&D podcast, and I was like, yeah, I'll make a little thing for you.
No, it was my first GM on a one-shot. That was my first ever experience at MagFest.
And so this is just to show, oh, cool, that's fancy. That looks a lot better than the stuff I was doing in After Effects, at least. And this was just kind of a test. That's the real-time particle system back there. These things just move, and that's driven by audio. One last piece of this is something I made for a YouTube tutorial, how to do this in Unreal Engine. This is a lot easier to do now than it ever was in the past, and a lot of people don't realize that Unreal can do this kind of stuff. I'm gonna turn the music off again for this. But if that first particle thing took 3 days to render, anyone want to just guess how long this took to render? Shout it out. 7 days. I heard real time. What else? A week. Less than 2 minutes for 18,000 frames. That's great. That was nice. I did not expect that. I was like, oh man, this is a whole thing. How long is this going to take? I reran it 8 times to try different things because it literally was less than 2 minutes to run this. It's very nice. Unreal Engine does really cool motion graphics, and you should look into it. That's all I wanted to share for audio. Let's move on to something else. Transitions aren't something that people usually see as effects. Usually just you cut in a smart place and it transitions to something else. You often see this when people are like, I'm going to change outfits. And you do that, and you cut it. That's great, but you can also go a little bit further. My wife is here, and she's also a creator. We're going to look at a video that I helped her with one of her old videos, where she was doing just that. The trick is to get a wind blower, what do you call it? Leaf blower, and do that. It's way more fun when you have a leaf blower to go, and you get this great wind burst, especially when you have long hair, which I do not. But if you have a coat, if you have a jacket or a blazer, or if you have long hair, if you have any kind of accessory or extremity or something that has secondary motion, super, super helpful. It's way more interesting. I'm going to play it one more time. Also, there's a fun little trick here of hiding a light behind purses, so you get that nice little glow effect and a sound effect. And so this is another example of a cut transition, but you're going to see that we're going a little bit further beyond. So green screen, there's a pole here. You're going to see the cut. We want some magical effects. Clearly that wasn't there a second ago, and it's going to disappear again. If you just keep your feet in the same spot, and you just try to practice the motion 2 or 3 times, and just try to ballpark it. If you do the cut at the same time as a big motion, it's an animation trick where if you do a big motion and you cut during that big motion, you get a lot of flexibility of how much you can actually get away with in that moment. And so it makes it really easy to cut to a different clip, basically. And the light is particularly helpful because if you do, and this was like literally like a 10-minute, like, okay, key it out, throw a thing in the background, and there's this. The light source, which has now been keyed out, or has been removed, garbage mat is what you'd call it, that pole that you had a second ago, with the light there, the motivated light source is what sells this. This is what makes this actually work. There is also a reason that I'm like moving my hand like this, is to make sure that my hand is exposed to the light, so that the light's not on the back of my hand. Little things like that. A lot of the visual effects tricks you're gonna see are planning and doing this a couple of times and going, oh, that looks terrible. I'll reshoot it. And you learn over the years to just shoot it better in the future. Compositing, which is kind of where we're heading with the next one. This is when you have assets and you drag and drop stuff and you start to integrate different elements together. This is from DreamWorks. These were interns when I was working there, and we made some fun stuff, just 'cause. Let's do it. Cut up for a little bit pacing.
Where's Rachel?
We got paid to do this at DreamWorks. This was great. But this is a great example of compositing because it's just you're taking these different assets. Sometimes it's a matter of using a bulge effect. That's what this is here. There's kind of this out and in whoop of warping space. You can kind of see like the whoop, whoop, whoop of space. And then there's just a couple of little smoke elements that have been tinted and a different blending mode to make it seem less smoky. And same kind of thing here, a little fade in, a little bulge effect. Nothing that fancy. This is not like the pinnacle of visual effects, but this is like just kind of what you do when you're learning this process and some useful things. Shadows are always a pain, so I always find it easiest to just fade shadows in and out. You can get fancy with it. I did not in this particular clip, but let's keep going. This was a brand deal, and this is basically to try and explain that you should always shoot a plate when you can. If you have something you want to appear, try to get a version with it there and with it not there. Whoops, come on. My bad. There we go. So there's clearly a clip where it doesn't exist, and there's a clip where it does exist. There's also different lighting. And the lasers are basically just tracing where I know it's going to be, because I can stick them on top of each other, mess with transparency, do whatever I want to do with the lasers, and then just have it sort of cut transition when I'm ready for it. Little things like that. Moving forward to tracking effects. Lots of different ways to do tracking. You can literally just track a point on your hand and put something there. Zelda fans, hopefully? Woo, yes. Or just like fun little goofy things. The hardest part about this is trying to write like backwards and trying to make sure it looks good from the camera's perspective. I was so pleased with myself. Like, this is gonna be so great. I was particularly proud of the little camera wipe, which I'll play it again so you can see it, because I did not realize, and I was like, how am I gonna get rid of that? I'll do that. Just kind of fun. But I actually want to show you a quick, okay, there's a fun little thing, that's okay, I don't need this on this computer. There's a fun trick about the tracking feature in After Effects in case you've never seen it. And it's not important what we track right now. What I want to show you is if I just take a clip with a person in it. Over here on the right, this is set to a different workspace, so I'm going to go ahead and go to Windows, Workspace, and I'm going to say Reset to default. Oh, and it's different in this computer. I don't have my normal workspace. I'll just open up the tracker. So the tracker is usually over here on the right. If it's not, Windows, you can pop it up. When you go to track footage, this is usually for if you're trying to, oh, I'm going to move my hand, I want to get the position data. You can track that. If you've got, a full scene where the camera's moving around and you want to be able to track that in 3D space, put stuff in there, there's a track for that. These two buttons over here, track camera, track motion, those are your two kind of go-tos for that. But there's a hidden feature that not a lot of people know about. Has anybody here heard of Adobe Character Animator? A couple people, yeah. So you guys know how you can, if you haven't heard of it, it's an Adobe application where you can basically just turn on your webcam, pick a character, and you just act. And it watches your face, and it tracks your facial features, and you just get to puppet the little character. I'll show you a clip later. It's very cool. That functionality is in After Effects. It's built into After Effects first. They moved it over to Character Animator. That's where that came from. And if you go to a masking tool, let's grab a circle. If I select my clip here, which has been keyed, and I just draw a little circle around the face. Doesn't matter if I'm masking or not, but notice what just happened to the tracker. It just changed. All those little buttons just went away. Now it has this question of, oh, what do you want to do? You can do face tracking, just the outline of the face, or detailed features. You can do all this stuff with rest poses and all this other stuff, but you can then just hit go, and it'll start to look for all the facial features. You can then immediately put different effects on eyebrows, on the mouth, whatever. So if you want to have some bulge effect, a fractal noise, whatever, you can apply it directly to a face. It's cool. A lot of people didn't know that's there. So instead of manually tracking facial points, it'll do all this for you, which we're not going to do anything with it at the moment, but there you go. That's done. Super fast, super easy. Fun fact. Back to the presentation. And let me do this and go back to extend, and we should be good. Yeah. Was that new to anybody, hopefully? Hey, sweet. Love it. Come on. Oh. Rodo. Who loves Rodo? I know. Rodo is when you have to cut yourself out. In the past, it was a lot of masking manually, trace the arm, trace the head. It was really helpful to do a lot of different masks instead of just one full body mask. That was a lot harder. The Rodo brush is way better now than it used to be, but if you want to change the background, you got to cut yourself out. There's a bunch of other stuff in here, which is just kind of fun. But the main thing is, I'm standing there. You got to cut it. And that's Rodo. Here's a more fun example. Look at this one. Catch it. And this is all just After Effects native plugins. Thank you for those who chuckled. I just want to show you this. This is a 3D ball. Boop. It's not real. It's fully animated. This is just like hand click, 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 click. Just made a little mask with a little zigzag and then used a roughen edges effect to get the little swigglies on it. And then roughen edges, different kind of thing. The rest of this is very similar to that projector clip and just kind of masking someone out. But then here, little particle system, just particle world, CC particle world inside of After Effects. There's plenty of really cool particle systems. There's also just a free one built in. But in order to do this, you got to cut them out. So that's the Rodo part. We have another example from my wife's channel from that video. It's a lot of fun when you want to do multiples of yourself. It's especially fun when they start to cross over each other and you're like, oh, that's not just masking. This was a fashion video. I'll mute this for her. This was a fashion video where she was showing off different outfits. It was a sponsored video, and they loved it, which was great. We love that. Now, there's actually a trick to this. We knew we wanted to have this song on this beat, and she wanted to have each version, each variant walking on the beat. But it's also slow motion, so that adds a layer of complexity. So just as a fun little tip of what we did, also it was raining, which made this really difficult. So behind the screen here, we're in like a hatchback. There's like a truck with the little thing, and we're like huddled in there with the tripod. Like, please don't get the camera wet. But what we had to do is we took the song, we stuck it in a, let's call it 30 FPS timeline, and just, okay, this will be a 30 FPS video, 30 frames per second. We'll take that song, put it in that timeline so we know it's at that frame rate, and then we're going to double the speed of the song. And so that she had to walk at that tempo. Because then we shot this in 60, which means we could slow it down to 30, cut the time in half, so her motion gets cut to half, which means that the sped up song goes back to normal. That was just something we didn't really think about until we got there and we're like, oh wait, how do we shoot? And we were like, oh, if we speed up the song, we slow down the song. So if you ever want to have slow motion stuff to music, that's the way you would do that. And the reason we put it in a 30 FPS timeline is because if you're at 24, it might not be perfect. And anyway, tips. Green screen is pretty self-explanatory. If you do Rodo, you do green screen, it's just a lot easier because you don't have to manually cut yourself out. You just stand in front of something that you can say, I'm not wearing green. Let's just get rid of everything that's green, right? That one's pretty much the same, it's just easier. But this one's fun. Invisible effects are some of the most important visual effects where you're not supposed to notice anything. Did anyone notice the invisible effect in this one? You want to shout it out? It is where the ball moves here. You're not really supposed to think about it, but when you go, oh yeah, the ball just like wiggles. That's because I'm sitting over here with like a stick going, and I have to remove the stick, right? So invisible effects are where you have to do stuff in the footage, but then you've got to paint it out or use the plate or however you choose to do it. It's where your effect is to make whatever you're doing not be visual at all. So counterproductive to the name visual effects, but it helps everything else actually work. Helps out with tracking markers. If you're like, oh, I want to track stuff in the scene, let's put some little black X's of tape on the wall. A great example of this is got to remove the tape. But it's really helpful sometimes to have those tracking markers, and it's way easier to just get rid of the black tape than it is to track a blank white wall with no information for the solve. So if that made sense to you, then cool. But that's invisible effects. Here's another one from when I really needed a beard trim, so forgive me. This was just like a test I was doing for something, and I was like, how can I make myself shrink? Now, the trick with this one, the behind the scenes of this is, there are two things to me that I was trying to figure out. Number one, if someone's shrinking, they should be at eye level with the camera. So here, we're meant to be more or less kind of with it. But then, if the camera's on a tripod, because I don't have any help, how are we suddenly now looking down at me? It was really uncomfortable to film it, but the camera's just sitting on a tripod at whatever angle I could get it at, and I stood as lean back as I could without falling over so that I could be like eye level with the camera, and then eventually, oh, I step back so I get farther away, get smaller, and now that I'm standing, the camera at that angle is now looking down at whatever stance I'm in. I think I had to put the tripod on like some boxes or something to try to get as high as I could, but it was trying to play with the angle. This is a lot easier if you have friends or people to help you. For those of us who don't, this is what you do. The second thing that was really helpful in making this, pseudo effect work is the color grade from here to here. It's not super noticeable, but I'm a bit more tan or like skin toned for myself here, and I become a lot more pale here because the bounce light from the rug would be a lot more intense if I'm that close to the ground. This big white rug is going to have a lot more just white light down here. And so that was a color adjustment I made to try and help sell that as well. Little things. Invisible effects. Now, 3D integration, my favorite stuff. This is where it starts to feel a little bit more advanced, but it doesn't have to. There are ways to make it very advanced where, this is the early video I did, where I was like, oh, I want to put a 3D character on the couch next to me. So what kind of pose? I took a bunch of photos, tried to push the pose with some drawings. It's easier to draw than it is to do 3D stuff, so I always start here. And then I pose out some character, figured out the pose. Then I had to match the lighting in 3D, do all this. And eventually I had this. This was my first viral video. It was very nice. Most people don't want to do all that. And usually in visual effects, it's not all about characters either. It's usually more about adding 3D elements, extra stuff. So this clip is what we usually see for this kind of thing. And that's fine. That's all right. What helps visual effects more than anything is sound design and then camera. So this was a freelance project at the time. Hopefully you're looking at that thing and not my acting. And hopefully if you do this, you're a better actor than I am. But that also was hopefully a lot more interesting with the sound than it was without it, right? Oh, what's going on here? Oh yeah, and just additional examples of like 3D integration. So I've done a bunch of different things where I've done product stuff, where there's real products, we switch it to animation, we do different things. For whatever reason, they wanted the Spider-Man hands, we went with that, and so on and so on. I've done stuff with microphones. This was like a You have 4 hours. Okay, those clouds are gonna be real blocky, but they didn't mind. 4 hours is what you get. This is what I want to show you though. This is literally, I mean, hopefully you're probably aware, that ball's not there. It's not a real ball. Also, if you weren't sure, that's totally cool. I'm not trying to like shame you if you like didn't catch that. If you're new to visual effects, that may not be super obvious because it looks fairly real. It's there, matches the lighting. But that ball's not there. That's the effect. This, it's not that complicated of a shot, but throw out how long you think it took me to make just like what you see here. Guess.
6 hours. 6 hours.
Took about 30 seconds. There's an app. This is going to be one of the bigger takeaways from this talk, I think. App's called Omniscient. It's free to download. There's a pro version or something, which I did grab because I wanted more exporting options. You're going to want that. It's really, really cool. I'm not being paid to say this. I just found out about this a couple of weeks ago. I'm obsessed with it. What you do is, it's for your phone, obviously. When you film the clip, it does the whole like room. If you've seen, what are those apps? There's Polycam, thank you. There's a couple of different apps where you can scan an environment and you can create a 3D scene just from your space, right? This does an interesting version of that, where as you film, and you can tell it, like, I want 4K, I want 1080, I want a certain frame rate. Like, it gives you all those camera settings exposed, so you can be really specific. You can lock the white balance, lock the exposure, all that kind of stuff. And you film your clip, and before you film, you do a little scan, and you just kind of give it the context of whatever space you want it to have, and it'll just kind of figure out, great, I know the space, it did the track, and then you can film as many clips as you want within that project. And what it does is it creates, in my case, not a very good mesh, because I was literally just like, blip, 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 blip. Okay, record, 30 seconds. I'm not even kidding. You get this mesh, it's very gray, and what it does is it creates, depending on the software that you choose to export to, this was in Blender, because everyone has access to Blender, it'll do a texture projection to match your camera, which I actually have on here. So let me show you what that looks like. I was gonna do this live, but then I couldn't figure out a way to actually stream my phone for you to be able to see it. So instead, I'm just gonna go to the folder and show you this. Oh, I need to share my thing again. So if I go to, come on. Blender's loading, so it's not letting me share my screen yet. There we go, duplicate. There we go. Oh yeah, I just upgraded from 4.3 on this laptop. Good, I'm already in there. So the mesh was just like literally like done. And then, not only does it give you a rough idea of the space, this is the camera data. And if I go, your 3D camera now exists from your phone, which is already really nice. A couple apps that do that. This one is included. You can export it as Alembic, FBX, USD. You get options. So for those who do stuff with file formats, you have some really good options there. Alembic, by the way, includes focal length changes. So if that's helpful to you, if you rack focus or that kind of thing, that data is in the camera. And if I switch to material preview, since I just opened this for the first time, it's going to do its little thing where it cooks some shaders. But if I open the material preview, you're going to see that that video that I recorded gets projected from that camera just within the frustum of the camera. It's not going to project everywhere because the scan is not what's most important. It's the camera's context that's the most important. Here we go. Oh, it doesn't know where to find the, oh no. Well, darn it. Oh, you know what? This computer doesn't have the plugin. Oh, bummer. Well, there's a plugin you download. You drop it in. That's what's missing here. I was doing this on my desktop computer, and then I put it on my laptop, and I didn't check it. Okay, well, my bad. If we have time in the end, we'll see about doing something with that. For now, we'll come back. But if you go into Blender, it includes the textures. If you go to Unreal, it doesn't include the textures. It's a different system for Unreal. But you can just literally make the object in Blender, put it right there, and it's automatically just in the scene. If you do it with Unreal, you would want to do it as like a layer pass and then just use it for compositing. Either way, still very easy. Let's go ahead back to the presentation, and am I in extend mode? I am, good. The last piece, and this is my recommendation, if anyone has a 360 camera, I have an old one, the Insta360 One X2, so I have an old one. If you record either just a photo, boop, you can use it for lighting of whatever objects you put in your scene, or if you do it for video, if you have a reflective material like this chrome ball, if you are like, oh, I want to have it so, you know, we get up close, we look at this object, and I wave at the reflection, you just record a video, use that as the sort of outer light sphere, and that will apply on this object. So you can have the scene get created, the camera data pulled in, a fake object that you put in here with real reflections from your actual capture session with like 2 pieces of hardware, your phone, and if you have this, that works too. If you don't have this, you don't necessarily need it, but everything you saw in this was literally 30 seconds to scan, record, airdrop it. I have a little USB drive that goes into my iPad, so I can just kind of boop, and then put it on the computer, import the thing, make a sphere, and it's done. Like, it was literally that fast. Very, very cool. If you really want to go down more of the 3D route, there's, of course, custom simulation. This was my first ever simulation I ever did. It's actually a cloth simulation that I totally broke, and that's why you get these little stringly bits, because I did not know how to do simulation. This was a demo I did on stage at Adobe Max. And the reason I'm showing this is I did this in a 30-minute demo on stage, because it's nice to do things fast and easy. And the thing I wanted to show you is usually when you have some kind of effect where you have destruction, because everyone loves destruction, there's the rubble, there's the dust, there's a bunch of different elements. If you have a library of smoke and dust and sparks and all that kind of stuff, great, especially when it works with your camera angle. However, if you don't have what you need from the right angle, I just want to make sure everyone's aware of EmberGen. So I'm going to go one more. This is already open, luckily. And I'll go like this, and I'm a pro now. So it's going to switch. Anyone here heard of EmberGen? Oh, sweet. EmberGen's awesome. Real-time volumetric simulations. There's also LiquidGen for liquids, for fluids. But let's go with let's do the default fire, just so you can kind of get the gist of it. If I take this fire thing, that's cool, that's nice. Reset the simulation as much as I want, right? There it is. If I take this is a live fluid simulation. Or sorry, volume simulation, not fluid. And so you can use whatever you want to emit or collide with these objects. This has a bounding box, so eventually I hit the roof. You can extend that, you can change it, do whatever you want to do. What I'm going to go to, though, I'll go back over here, go back to this bullet impact concrete, and hit don't save. There are lots of great presets to get you started, and you can see that if I reset this, little R key, boop. If you've never meshed with nodes, I can understand that may be like, whoa, that's a lot. It's really not hard to learn, I promise you. Take you like 10 minutes of just kind of like clicking each thing to be like, oh, okay, so that's what that does. You know, there's different things for like the particles themselves versus the smoke. You kind of play with it. But what you can do, they're coming, and there's also notes that help tell you like where it's coming from. But if I take, for example, just to show you super fast, if I make a collider and I plug the collider into the collider spot, and then I take another object, let's just go with primitive, shape, plug that in, and there's that. Now, let me go ahead and move this over here. Look how it now collides with the ball. Usually the problem with prepackaged assets is it doesn't match your camera angle, or it doesn't match the assets that you're trying to kind of blend it with. You don't need to have the perfect 3D object to represent your person at this certain pose. You can just use a couple of basic shapes, whether they're animated or whether they're just static. If you want to animate them, you can do all the cool smoke stuff. Hopefully you can kind of see that, right? Go like this, swoosh, whoosh. There's like advection or whatever you call it. But you can do all this kind of cool collision stuff very quick, very easily, and you can either export that as just like a layer pass and then just composite it in After Effects or Nuke or whatever you use, or you can actually export the 3D data and bring it into Blender or Unreal Engine or whatever. But this is a really, really easy way to get your hands on your own custom-made assets without really having this experience. And it's very easy to learn. So if you want to go deeper, you can. And there's different resources in here to help you. I've been using this for a couple of years. I really like it. I just want to recommend it because it's really cool. And it allows you to make really cool stuff in very, very fast timelines. All right. Now finally, onto animation. Most people probably don't want to do what I'm doing.
Be silent. Keep your forked tongue behind your teeth.
Because that's a lot of
I have
controls.
a pass through fire and death to bandy crooked words with a witless worm.
Lord of the Rings, yeah? Woo. Thank you. Whoever's over here, I like you. You guys too. This is Unreal Engine. This is full facial metahuman character animation with a custom rig. This is probably more than we want to deal with. Most people are more comfortable with motion capture, which is the idea that, turn this down a little bit, which is the idea that you can use a variety of different methods to capture your motion, whether you have a suit or some fancy, expensive setup, or you use many of the, the cloud processing or AI processing things where you can just kind of get in front of a webcam and do your thing. And you can just say, hey, that's my overall motion, that skeleton is what you get, and you can just retarget it and say, hey, 3D character, do the thing. Or you can go even simpler and do Adobe Character Animator, which I was doing this video years ago where I had this really dry, boring video about like tickets for this event because it was so convoluted. And I was just going to talk about tickets. It is what it is. And I was like, I don't think anyone wants to watch me just talk about this, so I'll just do the thing where I just kind of move around and puppet a character. And I had arrow keys to make him walk, had him walk off screen, scaled him down, had him walk back on screen, and I just had him move around. And I could use my mouse to drag the arms if he needs to like wave or something. But Adobe Character Animator, if you've not heard of it, it's just handy. It's really cool. You can drop in an audio file. It'll drive the mouse, the mouths, however you want it. You can use little emote buttons to have it do pre-programmed actions. So you can kind of choose your complexity level, or you can go pick a full character, make your own, whatever you want to do, and then you can actually puppet it around. And you can see in the top corner, that's Dave Werner. He's the guy who runs this product at Adobe. Very nice guy. And it'll do that same facial tracking we saw in After Effects. And you can customize your characters, do this whole little thing, and you get animated characters with no character animation experience, which is really nice. It also does the whole full body system. So if you want to do that, this is a really, really easy entry point. Here's a QR code to take you to Adobe. Full disclosure, that's my affiliate link. So if you're going to sign up for Creative Cloud, if you don't already have it, thank you. But now, just rapid fire through a bunch of tips. I can see my timer getting lower. Whatever you can do in camera helps a ton. If you've got something you want to add, fire, explosions, a character, it doesn't matter. The more you can do in camera, so much more helpful. If you think about the idea of something jumping on your shoulder, you shouldn't have like your whole body move over. It should be like the shoulder gets pulled down. This took me so many takes to get this right while I'm like having the whole conversation, filming the video, whatever. But this is just a tracking shot. That's all it is. I just pick a spot on the shirt, I track a point, and I have a null object there. And in my case, I did a whole little Blender grease pencil 2D animated a frog, basic circles, because I'm not particularly good at drawing frogs. And the little motion is what helps sell it a lot. This is that reminder of this shot, right? The idea of a motivated light source. If you don't have the motivated light source, you can fake it by kind of painting your own light. It's not nearly as convincing. Again, this was a pretty fast thing. I'm like, oh, let's just try it. Let's see what happens. It's quick, it's dirty. It works, but not nearly as well as if you actually had a light on the day. So planning helps. And then I wanted to drop a note about color correction too. There's a really handy workflow that I use for color correcting something and compositing over something else if you're not going to get like super deep into compositing, which I don't typically do. And that is, we don't need to watch that. What I'll do is I'll take each of the RGB, red, green, blue channels, and I'll just make levels adjustments just to those 3 channels individually. So if we look at the red channel of the clip, I'm pretty washed out. There's not very dark blacks, there's not very bright whites, but the background image has a lot more range than what my clip looks like. So I just add a bit of contrast to sort of match the vibe. Do the same thing for green. I'm very dark, there's no bright spots. Let's brighten a little bit of that up. For the blues, I'm very, very dark. Let's brighten quite a bit of that up. And so now we take what looks from this to that. And it looks a lot more integrated in the scene. It's not perfect, but that's a really quick way to make it look a lot better with really no major effort. But again, having lights will always help, especially if whoever you're filming has glasses. And you have to think a little bit more about what you're going to do. Here he's supposed to be holding this glowing sword. He's also wearing glasses, so it's a little bit less forgiving. And you'll notice we have little bright hot spots, and then here there's like a whole beam reflected in the glasses. I don't want to deal with comping stuff into glass and refraction and all that, so we just have like an Amaran beam light that we're holding there. And for the little swirly things, we just have two little like square lights. And we're doing this. It's a lot of fun. Now, it doesn't matter if you're doing animation or you're doing muzzle flashes or you're doing little motion graphic sliders. It doesn't have to be amazing all on its own, because by taking everything we've talked about and all the things we've learned, you can just start to layer them. And again, sound design and camera make a huge difference. This was a freelance project I did with a very short timeline and a terrible rig. This is the worst rig I ever had to animate, ever. There was no rig. It was just the bones. It was awful. But add all those things together, and if it ever goes forward, instead of pausing, does anyone see this on YouTube, Chalks and Warfare? Recommend. It's fun. Right? I can keep going, you get the idea. You add a lot of these things, and it starts to look a lot more interesting. Now, if we don't do that, here's another robot that had some of the effects, doesn't have the camera, doesn't have motion blur, has about the same quality of animation, and it feels pretty bad. Also, the fact that nobody in the room in that area like reacts totally kills the effect. Oh, robot. You know, so then we have to do invisible effects. We got to paint people out. We got to fix all that. At least I did the sound effects. One more tip on this. For the Rodo thing, having a bunch of people, I have a tip for you. Anytime I do something, notice how those two just acknowledge each other. That dude fell, everybody looks. How am I having them all work together when I'm obviously playing all the characters? There's two ways that I like to do it. They are all in sync, as you can see. They're in sync because I've got a timer running off camera, and I know that at 8 seconds, the dude falls. At 4 seconds, these two look at each other. And so you just have a couple little cues if you can look at a timer. If you can't, you do just like a little audio track where you time it out and you go, something that's really easy to pull out instead of like music or room noise or something that's more difficult. Something really, really short, take that out of the edit, but you hear the click and you know, oop, gotta look here, and little things like that. I'm running out of time. I use this same technique now with motion capture. See if you can name the action scene that I'm recreating. Anybody know what it is? John Wick, yep. If you listen closer, you can hear me go. And I hope you realize how much I trust you to show myself in this skin-tight onesie. It's very flattering. Just about out of time. I'll show you, this is not done yet, this project, but you can see kind of what this turns into for me in 3D. This obviously goes more deeper into animation beyond visual effects, but having these things in sync saves me so much time in animation when they're close. And so having timers and things like that, all these things connect and are super helpful. And let's just wait for him to throw them. There he goes. Whee! And so I have one last clip to show you. The question is, you've seen all these different effects, you've seen all these different methods. My question to you is, how did I accomplish this? This is an old clip. This is part of my interview at DreamWorks. You got one foot on the wall. How'd I do it? That's a really good idea. The idea that I'd be standing on the floor, camera's at a certain angle, we could do a clever cut to make that work. There's a futon right here, just off camera. I'm just sitting on a futon with both feet on the wall. Sometimes the best visual effect is not even to have to do the visual effect. It's to plan ahead to know, how would I do it? I would have to, be on the floor and make it seem like, oh, jump and do the angles. That's how I would have done it. If I had to, I didn't have to. So if you can plan your shots, if you can have all this in mind, you know your toolbox well, you can save yourself a lot of time with whatever you end up choosing. Hopefully this was helpful. Thank you so much.